think actually for the first time I'll dedicate this year to my children, particularly my sons, Yitzhak, Yoshua, Natan, and Yehuda Menachem. They're probably doing more important things than I've ever done in my life right now. We've done this progression, not intentionally, it's just happened this way. Bereshit, when we came back unexpectedly for Bereshit, there was the shuir klali, which I wasn't expecting to do. And I did speak briefly at the beginning of that shuir about man's responsibility, that being one of the first lessons that we learn in the Torah, the responsibility of Adam and Chava, how they are accountable for what they do. If you remember when we went to Noach, I put a lot of effort into saying that we're not B'nai Noach, we're B'nai Abraham. And last week I spoke more about B'nai Abraham. And I'm going a stage further. Because in this week's parsha, Vayereh, which is the second main parsha of Abraham, and the last really, because Chaye Sarah, though it deals with Sarah's death and the shidduch of Yitzchak, Abraham is not the main component of Chaye Sarah, or he is, but from the side. Abraham has two children. One is Yitzchak and one is Ishmael. And we get to the climax of this week's parsha, which is the end of the parsha, Perek Kaf Bet, to the Akedah. And there is a pasuk at the beginning of the Akedah which has itself triggered a lot of discussion, a lot of debate. We're okay without phones, okay, we're in a protected area, everything's great. I think they finished speaking in Knesset, so we should be okay. They tend to like to send things over when they're speaking in Knesset. They get a thrill out of that. Can only feel sorry for them. And the pasuk starts, "Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ele va'Elohim nisa et Abraham." After these things, God, lack of a better word, tested, elevated Abraham. Now the Rashi that you have in the second source is a Rashi you know very well. The Rashi is dealing with the problem, utilizing Bereshit Rabbah, dealing with the problem after what things? Like what happened that triggered this Akedah, which is shocking. It's shocking, the Akedah. And Rashi says, Yesh Omrim, he gives two dayot. I'm doing the second dayot, the second dayah. יש אומרים אחד דברים של ישמעאל שהיה מתפעל על יצחק שמר בן 13 שנה ולא מיכה. When we're learning a midrash, the Maharal tells us as well, we don't have to get caught up with, did this actually happen? Did this conversation actually take place? The midrash is trying to colorfully reflect a reality. And the reality makes a lot of sense. Meaning when Abraham had Yishmael through Hagar, he didn't know he was going to have another child. He had been promised, but he didn't know. Until it happens, you don't know. And he brought up Yishmael as a prodigy. Yishmael, it was Yishmael and Abraham. It was Yishmael and Abraham all the time. To the degree that towards the end of last week's parsha, God commands Abraham to do Brit Milah. Abraham is 99 years old. Yishmael is 13. And Yishmael does Brit Milah with Abraham. That's in the Psukim. Now you imagine this scenario. If you are Yishmael and you've been with your father side by side for 13 years, that's pretty serious. Side by side for 13 years. There are no other media, nothing else is going on. And then suddenly this little kid comes along. He just takes over. It's not your normal jealousy between siblings. This is a major role. Yitzchak comes along. Get out of the way. So the conversation that the Midrash is describing is a very, very likely scenario of real friction that existed when Yitzchak comes on the scene. Yishmael turns around. Whether this actual conversation took place or not is immaterial, but Yitzchak, according to the Midrash, turns around. Yishmael turns around to Yitzchak and says, I was 13 when I had Brit Milah. I was a growing teenager. I did it consciously. You were 8 days old. You had no say in it. You've done nothing. Why should it be that you are pushing me out of the way? What zechuyot do you have? Because your mother's Sarah, but what's yours? Remember, Judaism at the moment isn't really defined by the mother. Esav isn't considered a Jew. He has the same mother as Yaakov. Judaism here is more to do with belief, and Ishmael is a prodigy of Avram. Says the Midrash, Amar lo Yitzchak be'ever echad atam yarani, you're bragging about one particular limb in your body you were prepared to give to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ilu amar li HaKadosh Baruch Hu, zavach et atzmecha lefanai lo haiti ma'akev. If God was to tell me to give up my whole life, I wouldn't even bother for a minute thinking about it. This is very, very chadshani, ladies. There are certain elements in the Torah that we take for granted because that's where we've been educated. But if you open up the Pesukim to the Akedah says, Ha-Elohim nisa et Avraham. He said, God tested Avraham. Yitzchak is a co-star. He's not the main part of this story. Ha-Elohim nisa et Avraham. That's what the pasuk says. Chazal, which is really providing for us the Torah Sheval Peh of the Psukim, is mechadesh something which isn't a chidush for you because it's the way we've all been brought up, is that Yitzchak is the star of this. That it's Yitzchak. And the discussion that takes place with the Rishonim is how old was Yitzchak? And the Ibn Ezra, who is very outspoken here, says, if the Midrash is true, I accept the Midrash. But if it isn't, I think Yitzchak was about 14 years old. Old enough to schlep the wood, and too young to resist his father when he bound him for the Akedah. But everyone else thinks differently. We know that Sarah was 90 years old when Yitzchak was born. We know that she died at the age of 127 at the beginning of Parshat Chayei Sarah. And the assumption of, or the presumption of most of our Mefarshim is that she died immediately after the Akedah, Midrash, because of the Akedah, which means Yitzchak was 37, not 14. Which means Yitzchak gave his life at the Akedah. Knowingly. He was a 37-year-old who could have overcome his father. He could have pushed his father out of the way. So you'll ask me, but how did he know what his father was doing? He could have been tricked to the last minute. So you have to read the Psukim properly, and if you know how to read the Psukim in the way that Rashi does, you can see that Yitzchak did know. Have a look at the Psukim in the third source. Vayikach Abraham et alsei ha'olah v'yasem me'al Yitzchak beno. He gives Yitzchak the wood to carry for the sacrifice. Vayikach biado et ha'eish ve'et ha'ma'achelet v'yelchu shneim yachtav. I don't know what the eish Abraham was carrying, but also the knife. And then the pasuk says, v'yelchu shnehem yachtav, and they walk together. Notice that at the end of that pasuk, v'yelchu shnehem yachtav, they walk together. And then a conversation takes place with Abraham. Yitzchak speaks to Abraham. Vayomer Yitzchak el Abraham aviv, vayomer aviv, vayomer hineni v'ni. He says, Father, he says, I'm here, son. Hinei ha'esh ve'a'itzim va'ayeh haseh le'olah. I can see the fire, and I can see the wood. Where's the korban? And Abraham says to him, Elohim yir'eh lo haseh. God will show us a sacrifice. It could finish there, but it says V'yelchu shnehem yachdav. Chazal noted this repetition of the two went together. And Chazal asked the question, why would the pasuk need to emphasize the fact that they went together before the conversation and they went together after the conversation? The implication would be that something took place in this conversation that we would have assumed they wouldn't walk together anymore. And therefore the pasuk has said they carried on walking together. And that is what Rashi is saying. The second comment, they went together. Avram shaya yodea sheholech lishchat et beno haya holech b'ratzon v'simcha keyitzchak shelo haya magish bedavar. The beginning, Avram went as if he was going to do a korban. He knew what he was going to do. Yitzchak didn't know. But then, yireh lo haseh, kloma yireh v'yivcha lo haseh ve'im ein sel ola b'ni. If there's no lamb, it's you, my son. According to Rashi, who is really reflecting many midrashim, Yitzchak was 100% aware of what was about to happen, and he still went with his father. It's a very, very emphatic Rashi, and it changes the whole story from just being a challenge for Abraham to being a challenge for Yitzchak, meaning Yitzchak is being required to give his life for God. And ever since that day, ladies, the Jewish people have been giving their lives to God. And I've given shuir klali in the past. I've actually shown a midrash which says that Yitzchak was killed in the Akedah and was brought back to life. And that's why the second bracha in the Amidah is for Yitzchak, and it's Techiyat HaMetim. And that's why the Haftarah we read on this Shabbat talks about a child being brought back to life in Sefer Melachim. But I'm not going to go on that today. There is a comment made, Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer, who's the chief rabbi of Krakow. He died in 1933. His son took over, Reb Shmuel. Reb Shmuel was murdered by the Nazis, and his body was burnt, and the community had to pay for the ashes to be brought back to Krakow. He's buried in the big Krakow cemetery, not the Ramah cemetery. Rav Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer in a pasuk in Bechukotai says as follows. At the end of the Tochacha, the Bechukotai, it says, V'zacharti et briti Abraham, v'af et briti Yitzchak, v'af et briti Yaakov esko, it's the other way around, v'haaretz esko. Either way, he says, the remembrance is never mentioned by Yitzchak, only by Abraham and by Yaakov. I think it's the other way around. Just check. So, Rav Yosef Nehemiah says, you need Zeiche by Abraham, you need Zeiche by Yaakov, never Zeiche by Yitzchak. And he says, why? He said, Abraham represents Chesed. There are generations where Jewish people don't have chesed. There's not enough love. So you need to remind God that Jews have the potential to have love. There are generations like Yaakov of Tiferet, of Emet, where Jews are learning Torah, but there are generations when we're not learning Torah. So you need to remember Yaakov. The element of Yitzchak, a Jew being killed because he's a Jew, you never have to remind God because it happens in every single generation. Jews can't even get off on a plane in Russia. They can't go to college in New Orleans. Because they're a Jew. No other reason. Rabbi Sachs said it long before this. Anti-Zionism is just another excuse for anti-Semitism, which everyone is such. You just need an excuse. Genocide? Ribono shel olam. Genocide? My son's risking his life so it wouldn't be genocide. You tell me, but I can quote you. I can quote you Dresden, Hamburg, Hiroshima. When countries of the Western world wanted to save their people from casualties, they blew those countries to pieces. They didn't go into Japan. They blew Japan away. They didn't blow up the Japanese army. They blew up innocent civilians in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And the British blew up Hamburg and Dresden. There were no Nazis in Hamburg and Dresden. And our boys are in tanks in Gaza going by house to house because we're not blowing them up. Chutzpah. going through Europe. The British, we remember India, Palestine, Ireland. We're going to go through the nation Germany. We'll speak about Germany. I can speak about Germany for hours. Russia, Mr. Putin's going to talk about China. Do you know how many innocent people were moved from their houses so the Chinese could have an Olympics? They're going to talk to me? We've been giving up our lives since Abraham Avinu. And the Midrash thought it important to emphasize the willingness of a Jew to give up his life for his belief. But it's so much more than that. I need to go further. Rav Amital, if you'd have known Rav Amital, you'd have been very, very lucky. He was my Rebbe, my Rosh Yeshiva. He wasn't an extremist at all. He was central, sometimes even a bit left of center in certain ways. He joined the Israeli government after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, so there would just be a religious leader in the Israeli government. I just want you to understand that in the context of this sikha that he gave, he's not a fanatic. He doesn't belong to the fanatic right wing of Israel. And you also see from this sikha, he's been dead for 10 years. You see that nothing has ever changed in this country. Not the lies, nothing. Nothing. You just have to know facts, ladies. You need to know facts. I'm not going to give you a JU session now. But when we didn't have Jerusalem and the Kotel was there, they used to urinate on the wall. You ever seen a Jew urinate in a mosque? You ever seen a Jew daub a church? They used to urinate on the Kotel every day. You ever seen Jews walk into Al-Aqsa? We never ever go into Al-Aqsa. Most Jews don't even know what it is. They think it's the gold one. It's not the gold one. It's the one to the right. Most even Jews don't even know where it is. It has nothing to do with us. Do you know what they do on Har HaBayit? They play football there. I've seen. And then they hide weapons in the mosque. You ever heard of Jews hiding weapons in a shul? In Rena, you hide guns in Rena. In Young Israel of Woodmere, you hide bombs there. If you have, I've never seen them. I've been there a few times. I've never seen them. I don't think it would go down so well with the community. Look at this essay, ladies. It's I rely on my Rosh Yeshiva, and I just want to share it with you to put things into context, because we've lived a long time. We're 3,000 years old. One of our Bogrot wrote last week that if Avram was born in 1948, he became Frum. He made Aliyah when he was 75. So 1948 plus 75 makes 2023. I'm just reading what they wrote. It's interesting. Hanatzrut v'ha-Islam, if you look at Christianity and Islam, and I don't want to generalize here because there are Muslims, I don't know whether they'll survive, but they come out on the press and they tell the truth, and then I suppose they go into hiding. You see them, every so often a Jew sends them around and then Jews send them to each other. We're the only ones that watch them, right? The BBC certainly doesn't. Hanatzrut v'ha-Islam, shtei hadatot shekavshu et ha'olam. These are the two religions that really conquered the world. Again, the world, we'll talk the Western world because the East is East, right? There's a lot of things going on there which aren't Christianity and Islam. But they conquered the world. Most of the religion in the Western society that we come from is either Christian or Islam. Shtehem monotheistio. They're both monotheism. They believe in one God. And therefore they are preferable to other religions that existed before them, pagan religions that believed in absolute idolatry. It needs to be qualified, so hang on. The emunah of Avram, monotheism, one God, still remains a major difference between us and other idolaters in the world. About there is a difference. Christianity, certainly Catholicism, according to the Rambam, is avodah zarah, because they believe in the Holy Ghost, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, the embodiment of God in a human being, which is kafira, which is avodah zarah. So he says that they believe in the Trinity, Christians, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And the essence of this Trinity is that they put together God and a human being, who is, of course, a Jew, lived and died a Jew on Seder night. Seder night was the Last Supper. Not every element of Christianity defines this in the same way. But none of them just believe in one God without J. On this particular point, Islam is much closer to Judaism. הרמב"ם כידוע פוסק באגרתו לרב עובדיה הגר שהמוסלמים נמנים על מאמיני הייחוד. The Rambam says, when the Rambam on the one hand defines Christianity as avodah zarah, but he says we have much more in common with Muslims because they believe in one God. ואינם נחשבים עובדי אלילים. They are not considered halachically idolaters. A nafka minah would be going into a place of worship, right? You theoretically, according to the Rambam, you couldn't go into a church. It's a makom avodah zarah. Certainly not the Vatican, where they have all our kalim there as well. So you can't go to the church, but you could go to a mosque if you so wished. Okay. But I want to point something out. I started off making a point of the Mesirut Nefesh of the Jewish people, but I need to qualify it and go a stage further, which is really, really important. And you are living it. We are living it. There is, even if we both believe in one God, we have an entirely different definition of Kiddush Hashem, of what the sanctification of that God is. We have a different definition. So read ahead. כמו הרבה מהאמונות היסודיות של האסלאם, אבי המוסלמים שאל מהיהדות גם את האמונה בעולם הבא. They borrowed a theme from us, like many religions borrowed themes from us, because we were the first religion, of Olam Haba. Muslims have an Olam Haba, but it is an entirely different Olam Haba to a Jewish Olam Haba. Olam Haba שהמוסלמים מאמינים בו שונה בצורה מהותית מעולם הבא היהודי. There's a qualitative difference between what they say is the world to come and what we say is the world to come. אנו מאמינים שהעולם הבא אין בו גוף וקביעה. We believe that when we die, we leave our bodies behind and our souls go up to heaven for eternity. The body goes back to the earth and the soul goes to Shamayim. And there's no physical reality in the world to come. It's not a physical place. Ela nefashot hatzadikim bilvad. It's righteous souls and righteous souls alone. Below guf kamalachei asharet. We are without bodies like angels. Lo achila, there's no food there. Lo shtia, there's no drink there. V'lo davar mikol dvarim shegufot bnei adam tzrichim lehem ba'olam hazeh, and there's nothing there that a body needs in the world to come. No aches and pains, no fevers, no nausea, no dehydration, no need to go to the doctor. Our bodies stay behind and they go back to the earth, and our souls live on forever. L'umatenu, just for your general knowledge, if you didn't know, המוסלמים מאמינים בגן עדן גשמי המצפה לצדיקים לאחר מיתתם. Muslims believe in a physical future world, totally physical. לפי האמונה המוסלמית, according to the faith of Islam, העולם הבא מספק למגיעים אליו את תאוות הגשמות שהם לא הספיקו לממש בעולם הזה. Their greatest physical fantasies are provided to them in the world to come. That's their belief. 70 virgins. That's their belief. They go to the world to come, and all of their physical dreams of this world realize themselves. B'nikud l'olam haba tahor, as opposed to our pure olam haba, haruchani, our spiritual olam haba, והמרומם, and our elevated, שאנו מאמינים בו, המוסלמים מצפים להגיע לאחר מיתתם למקום שבו יוכלו לממש את הפנטזיות הפרועות והמוכרות ביותר. They are dreaming of a world to come where they can realize the most physical fantasies they've ever had. Muslimin, I can tell you, actually, both the British and the French, they've been doing suicide bombing for centuries. And when the British and the French, there is a rule in Islam that you're all over 18, and the Montreal girls, they'll help you with this, that there's a rule that you don't go to this place if you are missing very personal private parts. So when the British and the French wanted to try and convince these people not to commit suicide in the name of their God, they used to castrate them after they died, and then they don't go to heaven. And this worked as an incredible deterrent at the beginning of the last century towards Muslims who just wanted to kill people. It's been going on for a long time, this jihad. It's not new. And that's what they used to do. Our country has never wanted to touch other people's bodies. We've never done that, although it's a very effective deterrent because they just don't go. There's another way, by the way, if you attach a pig to their body when you bury them, because that's not kashrus as far as they're concerned either, they also don't go to Olam Haba. So that was also a minhag, was to bury them with a pig, with pig skin. Our people have never done that. We've never messed with bodies. We've never used that as a threat. בניגוד לנוצרים, הזכירו לחסום את דמיון האנשים לתפוס את דמותו של האל המופשט. As opposed to Christians who didn't believe in one God, Islam did, אך נתנו draw לדמיון לתפיסת העולם הבא. But there's an incredible, you'll see where he's going in a second, there is an incredible temptation, bribe, for people to do what they're doing. ההבדל בין עולם הבא המקורי לבין עולם הבא שמוסלמים עושים לעצמם הוא בעל חשיבות רבה. This difference isn't just a technical difference. For them it's physical, for us it's spiritual. Not at all. What Rav Amital now explains is ומשליך על התייחסים לכל אמונתם. אומנם המוסלמים מאמינים באל יחיד, they believe in one God, אך מטרת עבודתם היא להגיע לעולם הבא שהם מאמינים בו. The whole purpose of their avodah is to get to that world, that beautiful oasis that they are. That's the purpose of their life and death, is to get to that world. Not to serve God, but to get to that world. So they do what they do. And if you read some of the conversations that were printed last week of people in the middle of killing Jews, phoning their parents. I don't know whether you saw these conversations. Phoning their parents and bragging that they killed 10 Jews. And the parents saying, Shkoyach, we're proud of you. And they don't want to come back because they want to die in the name. Why do they want to die? God is holy, but I want to get to that world. It's for me to get to that Olam Haba. This is a fundamental difference. Hashahidim, these holy people, who are prepared to die for their religion, not for the sake of God, but to get to this wonderland that they believe in. There's plenty of place in hell for these people. They're going to have a great time for eternity with Hitler, Himmler, Heydrich, and Goering. Plenty of room for these people. It's eternal. They're in for such a shock. How could it be? How could a religious person believe that shechting women and children gets you a world to come? What religion could say that? And there are plenty of Muslims in the world who are scared to speak out, who wouldn't agree with this. What religion would say that this is the way you get Olam Haba? By maiming people? By throwing grenades at old women? What religion, in God's name, what religion would do that? And it's not in the name of God. It's to get to their Olam Haba. You have to know Rav Amital to know he's not a fanatic. So Kiddush Hashem for them is a medium to get to another world. That's not the Kiddush Hashem of the Akedah, ladies. That's not the Kiddush Hashem of the Akedah. The Kiddush Hashem of the Akedah is to die in the name of God, for God. Rav Amital says in the next paragraph that he has searched, and if he has searched, I believe him, he hasn't found one midrash, and he knew midrash well, that suggests that God said to Avram, shecht your son because he'll get Olam Haba. There isn't one Jewish source that suggests that the reason that Avram shechted or was prepared to shecht his son was so that his son would get to the world to come. Not at all. It was just Lamut al Kiddush Hashem. You understand? Whatever they can define their world, whatever way they want to, that's not the point. The point is, what is the service of God? And here the service of God isn't the service of God. It's to do something horrific, which they think is good, in order to get to some kind of fantastical world that they want to live in. Rav Amital wrote this. Rav Amital's been dead 10 years. This Sikha is 20 years old. Things just haven't changed. But Yitzchak and Ishmael, they're both the sons of Abraham. So I told you a few weeks ago, we're not B'nai Noach, we're B'nai Abraham. Ladies, we're not B'nai Abraham, we're B'nai Yitzchak. We're B'nai Yitzchak. Abraham had 2 children. We don't follow Ishmael, we follow Yitzchak. And even Ishmael wouldn't have behaved the way they're behaving, because Ishmael was Choseh b'tshuva. He came, he accepted Abraham at the end. Esau went even worse. But we're B'nai Yitzchak. So what is B'nai Yitzchak? The next source I want to tell you outside. I'm going to skip Rav Hirsch for the moment. Mesirut Nefesh, Rav Yosef Nehemiah says, is fundamental to Judaism. Our belief in God and our willingness to die just because of our belief. And this willingness to die isn't just religious people. There is a place in Krakow. It's the only shul I'm aware of in Krakow that isn't Orthodox. It's a Neologian shul, which is kind of conservative. On the outside, it's probably the most beautiful shul in Krakow. It's called the Temple. It's golden plated in the inside. It's almost all gold on the inside. Blows your mind away. I don't think it's anything on the Ramah shul, but that's my own opinion. There's a story that Miriam Wolf once told that took place outside of the temple as the Germans entered Krakow. There was a certain man, maybe she has his name, who was anti-religious, a Jewish anti-religious person living in Krakow. And he's walking past the temple, which is a pretty main area in the Jewish area before they removed the Jews from the old city. And some Germans grab him and they pull out a Sefer Torah from the temple and they put it on the floor. And they tell this man who's anti-religious, urinate on the scroll. And the man looks at the German in the eye and he says, I'm not doing that. You're joking. And the German says to him, no, you don't understand. You urinate in the scroll or I kill you. So the man picks up the Torah and he holds it and he says, so you'll kill me. And the German killed him. There was another Jew in the ghetto, came Hanukkah. He managed to collect some margarine. These stories I could tell you all night. And he managed to light a Chanukiah. And the German passing by saw the Chanukiah. They run into the house, pull the Jew out, fill a barrel full of petrol, put the Jew in the petrol and start burning him. And you know what the Jew did? He sang Ma'osu. He sang Ma'osu. We've done so much Mesirut Nefesh in our lives. So much. I don't know how much you know, there was a guy I was in yeshiva with. I kind of lost touch with him. But every time someone dies from our yeshiva, we get a message. And 2 days after the war started, I got a message saying both of this guy's sons were killed on the first day. And then I heard the story. They both live in Beersheba. They heard there was trouble. They went with their side guns and ran into Sderot. They were defending Jews in Sderot with their pistols. And they were fighting RPGs, anti-tank missiles. They were both killed. It's Mesirut Nefesh. There's no end to Mesirut Nefesh of the Jewish people. And Mesirut Nefesh is the Shem Hashem. It's not to get to some wonderful physical world. We don't even believe in that. It's because we are Jews, and therefore it's Kiddush Hashem. But I want to tell you something. I don't even want to talk about that. Judaism doesn't even believe in that as the ultimate ideal. The ultimate ideal of Judaism is Kiddush HaChaim. It's a sanctification of life. We believe in life. We believe in living. We've always believed in life and living. Jews all over the world are liberals. If you're from the United States, you know that 70% of the Jews in the United States vote for Democrats. Even when Democrats aren't very pro-Israel, they vote Democrat. It drove Trump mad. Because however pro-Israel he tried to be, classic Jews, I'm not talking about certain communities, but classic Jews would always vote. Why? Because Jews are liberal. Why are they liberal? You know the Jews in England were part of the creation of the Labour Party. Jews always voted Labour in England. Now, not so much, because Labour is off the wall. He'll lose his job because he won't back Hamas in the end. He'll lose his job, the head of that party. But Jews always cared about people. Even when Jews were involved in communism, it was because they cared about people and the way that Tsar was destroying people. Jewish people love life. We're not looking to die. You'll never find a Jew getting on a bus and blowing up women and children so that he can get to some physical world with virgins. You'll never ever find that, ever. Ladies, you're watching more than I'm watching, but you know and I know Jews go out to demonstrate in Washington or New York or London. They take flags and they stand there singing Oseh Shalom B'Momav. Do they burn flags? Do they turn cars upside down? Do they burn the country that's hosting them's flags? And if these people choose to ignore them, they will get exactly what they got in 1933. It will happen again. It will happen again. Lloyd George called Hitler a messiah. Time magazine said Hitler was man of the year. And then the world lost 50 million people because they thought it was a Jewish problem. When people walk into towns and do what they did, and I have to tell you one other thing, you cannot generalize regarding 2 million people in Gaza. But it is false and it is lies. And I know this because I know people and I've spoken to people who were there to say that the only people who entered these towns were Hamas. It's not true. Hamas came in, they broke down the fences, and the people of Gaza came in after them. Ladies, they don't know where all the victims are because different people took them to different places. Hamas doesn't know where everyone is. People were kidnapped by regular Gaza people. The houses were looted. People were raped by regular people. Don't talk about the innocents. I'm sure it wasn't 2 million people. But it wasn't just Hamas. This was a pogrom a la 21st century. This was a pogrom like Kishinev in 1905, like Yedvavna in 1941. This was a pogrom done by regular people. And which army in the world throws grenades at children? Which army? The last army that did that was the German army, the SS. When was the last time a Jew did that? When? I had a friend who was in Lebanon in the last war in Lebanon, and they went in the last minute, and they went into houses because they had no food, and they had to take food out of the fridges. Ladies, they left money behind. They left money in the houses to pay for the food that they ate. One of my friends, his gun broke a television. He left money to pay for the television. He didn't steal anything, he paid for it. Tell me the last Marine who did that. Last SAS British commander who did that. For us, we've always believed in Kedushat HaChaim. Yitzchak is a monument for us because he represents the dedication of the Jewish people to their belief and their preparedness to die for their belief, saying Shema Yisrael, but we've never believed that this is what we should do l'katchila. We're not looking to do it. We're looking to live. We've always looked to live. Pikuach nefesh is doche Shabbos. To save a life, not just to save a life. You know that, right? But what you might not know is to save a life for 2 hours, you can break Shabbos. To save a life for 5 minutes, you can break Shabbos. Not just to save the life of a kid who, please God, will live to 120, a 95-year-old who has a heart attack, you can save his life, even though, how many more years do they have? Pikuach nefesh is doche Shabbos. There's no cheshbon here. And it's a mitzvah for the greatest person in town to break Shabbos, to save whoever needs to be saved. Life is a value in Judaism. God knows, please God, our children will come out from there alive, but well, I don't know. And all of that, we need to talk to them about what they've seen and what they've experienced, because we're a people that loves life. I don't need to tell you, you love life. When was the last time a Jewish group of people barricaded some Muslims into a library in college? When was the last time anyone felt scared from a Jewish student in any campus in the world? Ever. When was the last time someone crossed the road when they saw a Jew walking down the street? When was the last time a Jew screamed out Muslim to a Muslim walking in the street? Or tried to pull a plane off the ground because there were Jews on it? When was the last time? I challenge the BBC. When was the last time? Bring me proofs. In France, about 10 years ago, there was a very, very extreme demonstration. And they started burning a lot of Muslims in France. Again, it doesn't mean all of Muslims. There are plenty of quiet, good Muslims, a lot of Muslims in the world that have nothing to do with this. We don't hear them. They were burning the French flag. And it was written in one, I think in Le Monde, in one of the major French newspapers, they wrote, if only we'd looked after the Jews in the war, at least now we would have a community that honors the hosting country, that honors the flag of France, as opposed to a group of people who've walked into our country and now they burn our flag, and they will burn the American flag if they haven't burnt it yet. And they'll burn the British flag because they're simply not interested. And you know what, ladies, besides venting with you and you being my therapist every week, I really couldn't care less about what they do. It just makes me feel proud to be who I am and proud to be part of my people and my people who care about life. Now, you know, I'm sure you've heard that the major nest of Hamas terrorists are under Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. And they interrogated one of the terrorists they caught. I'm just quoting him, that they do lie a lot. He said, we're there because we know you won't bomb it. And do you know why they took 200 hostages, 230 hostages? Because they know that we care about life. Because they know that we'll look for them. And they know that we'll pay for it if we have to pay for it. I don't know how much we'll pay, but I remember when Gilad Shalit was, you remember Gilad Shalit? I remember, I just visited Australia the week he got kidnapped. And I was giving a shuir, I think it was somewhere just outside of Cape Town. They asked me to give a shuir on Pidyon Shvuyim, on releasing people who are kidnapped. There's a lot of literature because they've been doing this to Jews for many, many years. I don't know whether you know, but the Maharam Mirottenberg, who was a famous Rishon, was kidnapped and they wanted a huge ransom. And he was posek to his kehillah from jail, not to redeem him. He died in jail. He said, if you pay the ransom, they're just going to take another rabbi. He died in jail, the Maharam Mirottenberg, very, very serious scholar. There's a big, big halachic sugya. And I was going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, the pros and cons. If you release terrorists, they'll kill other people. A lot of the people involved in what happened on Simchat Torah were people released from Gilad Shalit. So there's a good reason not to release terrorists because it endangers other people. But I said at the end, and I still hold by it now, It's all about Tselem Elokim. It's all about being in the image of God. And I think it's the most incredible Kiddush Hashem that the most evil people in the world know they can play on our morality, that they can take people and they know that it hurts, that it makes a difference. I think just hours ago, I didn't see it. I don't think Israeli press is even releasing it. I think they put another 3 old ladies on the screen. And you put those old ladies on the screen to jihad, they'll just giggle. But in every Jewish home, a heart is hurting. That's something to be proud of. Something to be proud of the fact that that's our weakness. Really? You think that's our weakness? That's our strength. Because we care about life is our strength. That's why we are who we are. That's why we're still here, because we care about life. Because however important the Akedah is, Kiddushat HaChaim is even more important. And that's the last source, which I won't have time to go into detail. I'll finish on time, not to worry. There are only 3 sins that we're allowed to die for. Avodah Zarah, idolatry, Shfichut Damim, murder, and Gilui Arayot, promiscuity. What does that mean in halachic terms? It means that if a non-Jew comes up to me and says, I kill you if you don't kill him, I die. I die. And if a non-Jew comes up to me and says, you bow down to this idol or die, I die. And promiscuity will be the same. Why? If Kedusha HaChaim is so important, then why do I have to die for these 3 things? So the Maharal, which I'm now going to summarize, because I do get carried away, the Maharal says on the first perek in Pirkei Avot, there are 3 things that the world is built on: Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim. It's the second Mishnah. Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim. I spoke to you about this a few weeks ago. Torah is between man and God. It's between man and man. Avodah is between man and God. Gemilut Chasadim is between man and man. And the Maharal says these 3 things. Now these 3 things the world stands on: man and himself, man and other people, and man and God. The 3 cardinal sins negate those 3 pillars. Avodah Zarah is against God. Shfichut Damim is against man, murder. Gilui Arayot, promiscuity, is against yourself. So says the Maharal like this: Kedushat HaChaim, the holiness of life, is tantamount in Judaism. It's the most important thing. But if they ask you to do one of these 3 things, then you have to die. Why? Because life isn't an ends. Life is a means. And if in order to live, you have to do certain acts, it's better not to live. It's just better not to live. If in order to live, I have to kill someone who's innocent, better for me to leave this world. There's no point me living and breaking that code. So the Maharal says only 3 things. But if one of these 3 things is there, then life isn't life. And what is the underlying principle in the Maharal is that life is so important. Do anything for life. But if you lose the image of God, you're not alive anyway. You're not alive anyway. You are, to paraphrase, you are the living dead. And therefore in Judaism, to summarize, we have this incredible principle of Mesirut Nefesh, which has been proved again and again and again, but not Mesirut Nefesh to get to some fantasy world. Mesirut Nefesh is defined, I give my soul to God, irrelevant of where I'm going. I don't do it in order to get to some kind of 5-star pub in Shamayim. Having said that, pikuach nefesh, the value of life, is the most important thing. And I challenge anyone to show me a more moral army than our army. The amount of soldiers we lose because they walk into a house and they check who's there before they throw in a grenade, as opposed to other armies. Well, I'm not even critiquing, but it's a fact. The value of life is so critical to us, but we must always remember that life is a means and not an end. And in order to live, you have to uphold certain standards. What we saw and what we've seen, I have to be honest, I didn't think I'd ever live to see these kind of things. I really didn't. I know they happen. I spent most of my life learning about how they happened and where they happened. I didn't think I'd live to see these things. But I thank God every day that I'm part of this people. I'm not just Ben Avraham. I'm a Ben Yitzchak. I'm a Ben Yitzchak. I'm prepared to Moshe Nefesh. But I'm a Ben Avraham who has incredible chesed. Remember, the parsha starts with Avraham doing machnis orchim with the angels, and it finishes with the Akedah. All we ever talk about is chesed la'Avraham. That's all we ever talk about. Avraham was the first monotheist in the world. He defined religions forever. But we talk about chesed of Avraham. And let me tell you one more thing. When we get to Chayei Sarah, and we see Avram's looking for a shidduch for Yitzchak, it's a bit different today, right? He's not looking for a white shirt. He's not looking for a white tablecloth. He's not looking to see whether they're black stockings or yellow stockings. He just wants to see whether Rivka is a good person. That's it. That's the only prerequisite. There's nothing else there. As soon as he sees that Rivka feeds the camels and that Rivka offers him food, that's the shidduch. Nothing else. Not that your great-grandfather was a Balatanya, and not that you wear this or you wear that. She's a Balat Chesed. Her father's Oved Avodah Zarah. Her brother is a criminal. And Eliezer isn't even interested in that. She's a mensch. Understand these messages. This is our education. This is what we believe in. We don't blow up people for the sake of blowing up people. We have Tzva Hagana Yisrael, which is the army that defends Israel. We were attacked. We are defending in the best way possible. And I challenge anyone to prove that they are any better. We live by Tselem Elokim. We live by Kedushat HaChayim. But if life doesn't have certain values, there is no point to life. Remember that God destroyed the world because it was Malei Hamas, because it was full of corruption, and because there was no values. So God brought a flood and he destroyed the world. Life is not an end. Life is a very, very important means, and we believe in its holiness, and we try as much as possible to live our lives to the full. But we don't become animals beneath animals. Animals don't have a choice. So I think, ladies, and if people are listening to this elsewhere, however scary it is, and I think it's less scary here. We have our army here. I'd be pretty scared if I was in college and thousands of people were burning the flags and chasing me in the streets, and I don't have an army to protect me. The police are too scared to get involved. So wherever we are, we have to remind ourselves of our heritage, which is being good people, honoring life, and defending the values in life, and believing what we believe. I think every Jew in the world should hold their head high, wherever they are. So they call you a name, maybe you get a punch. But at the end of the day, you go home a Jew, you live as a Jew, not just as a Ben Abraham, but also as a being Yitzchak. Okay, very good.